I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you. Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Casey Forrey. This one's special to me. Casey has been my trainer for, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years, several years,
maybe 5.
It's been a little while, for sure. He's helped me in so many ways, not just in my own, not just improving my fitness, but helped me work through several injuries, 2 calf tears, shoulder. I don't know what happened to my shoulder, a recent elbow problem. I mean, a lot of things, but also I think physical aside, and we'll get into this stuff, but physical aside, I think helps me in a mental place too, to be able to come in and, you use these as training sessions and sometimes just mental health sessions.
Yeah.
So first off, thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for all that you've done for me over these years. But I appreciate it all. So thank you. And
thank you for having me, and basically like just trusting me with, the goals that you have in mind and helping you through those injuries, because I've been there myself, and yeah, it's not fun, and it definitely takes a toll, like mentally, and emotionally, when we're stuck in that place of everything. If something hurts and I can't do what I would like to do.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. Well, I'm sure we'll talk a lot about all that stuff, but let's just sort of step back first, and I'd love it if you can share with us your story, your journey, and we'll kind of talk about whatever we feel is interesting.
Okay. Funny story. Like when I was born, I had 2 collapsed lungs, so I wasn't breathing. I was put in an incubator, but I was like a very large baby, and so
that hasn't changed.
No, it really hasn't.
Also still very large.
And so it's kind of like a foreshadow, but my mom, saw me in like the like intensive care, like baby unit with a bunch of premature babies. And like, so they're all like super tiny. And then there's like me, this like almost 10-pound baby. It's just this monster around everything else. And so that kind of, I don't remember any of that, but that's just what she told me. And then fast forward into, growing up, I always felt a little bit different than everybody else. I was diagnosed with ADD when I was 5. And I always felt like there's this internal battery that was just driving me forward. And in some ways it drove me to like positive rounds, and like with athletics and sports, there's a positive outlet. But when I didn't have those, it was kind of like a double-edged sword, where it would lead me to like finding ways to like soothe and like calm down that energy or that motivation. And at an early age, I kind of turned to the outside substances, like drinking and smoking pot, everything else you can possibly think of, as a way to kind of mitigate that drive, and also to like also make me feel like okay in my mind, because my mind was always going. So I was a smart kid as long as I could like work with my hands. anything I set my mind to, I would accomplish for the most part. Um, so as I got older, I mean, my parents separated when I was 2. My mom was a single parent, worked full-time job, and then she did babysitting outside of that, and then did balloons for kids' parties. So she kind of like instilled in me this like always work despite everything else. And so I saw her doing that. I saw my dad. He just basically worked his whole life until recently where he retired. But I saw the work ethic that should have been put in there, or that I feel some people don't always have. Um, and so into high school, started messing up and got into some legal trouble as a result of drinking and doing drugs. Um, got locked up for a little bit when I was 17. Um, and then when I got done with that, um, I had a friend that was sober and introduced me into like Alcoholics Anonymous and a different way of living um, that wasn't as self-destructive. Um, and for like the year and a half that I was sober, between the ages of 18 and 20, uh, I built some good friendships. I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I worked for other people, but I always felt that whoever I worked for was doing something that was doing it wrong. I always was able to work my way into management really quickly in my jobs, but I always wanted to be my own boss. And so moved up to Santa Cruz, lived up there for a little while, managed a restaurant, left that job, worked for UPS, got into management there within 6 months, and then still felt like there was something else I wanted to do. Like I wanted to open up my own restaurant, so I went to culinary school. Quickly found out that culinary school is basically just teaches you the basics, but doesn't really give you the tools you need to like actually run a restaurant. Um, because running a restaurant, you have to have like a lot of money to be able to sit on and have just in case, because it's a risky business. And so took that information and took that experience, and because I mean I love food, and you can tell just by how large I am. I love to eat. Um,
And you can cook. I can attest to that.
yeah, and that's honestly one of the ways that I've learned how to share and like give love is through food. And that's one of the things that like when I cook for other people and like have them try the food that I put a lot of like energy and like attention to, and like that experience I feel is, I wouldn't say like spiritual, but it's like if it's like one of like the best feelings when somebody feels like, oh, that was really good. So backtrack. So I played baseball through college, and then at 25 I aged out, and I still ate like I played baseball and sports, but I wasn't as active. And so within a short period of time, in 2009, I got up to around 290, 300 pounds. And I saw a picture that when you see yourself every day, you don't realize like what you look like. But when you see a picture, you're like, oh, whoa, like I'm really out of shape.
Yeah.
And that was a moment where I was like, okay, I need to do something different. And so started training more to kind of get back into shape and kind of get get my athletic abilities back. And then shortly after that, went into drug and alcohol counseling, went through school for that. And that basically taught me a lot of ways to help motivate and intrinsically help people to find out what their purpose is. Because a lot of times what happens with, in my experience with alcoholism and drug addiction, is that people don't really have a purpose. And so they look to outside substances to try and fill that purpose. Same thing with like depression and a lot of mental health issues. Like if we don't have something that drives us and we have something to look forward to, like waking up in the morning, it's going to be really hard to like find joy in life. And that's kind of what steered me towards personal training, is that I love helping people get out of pain and be able to get stronger. Because that's something that if I can teach you all the tools to better your life, like physically, which will then help you out mentally and emotionally, then you're a better off, you're a better off person, and you're more resilient to any kind of stress or substance, or not substances, but issues that come up in life, because life happens and it's not a matter of, you know, how we accept whatever issues going on. We can either choose to like accept it as it is and know that it's just temporary, or we can, or what people end up doing is just, oh well, life sucks, this is terrible, and then you get into that victim mindset. So I used all these tools to, you know, start training myself. Started out working at LA Fitness, and that's where I met you.
Yep.
I think what
Was
I
that
was
your
your
first job
that was
training?
that was my first corporate job training.
Okay.
Because like I was training, you know, friends and family before that, but not like, all right, here's your uniform, go peruse the gym and try to build some sales. And it's just it's you get more face time with people when you're in a corporate gym. But I knew that it wasn't a, yeah, I'm working at LA Fitness or I'm working at Equinox and like I've arrived, because that's not how I viewed it for myself. But you were training with somebody else before me, right? Or was I?
No, they did like some introductory thing. I mean, the way that they did training at LA Fitness was, I didn't like it. I mean, I had some, I don't know, evaluation with someone, and then they're like, okay, we'll place you with, it turned out to be you, but like, we're going to place you with someone after this evaluation. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm happy it worked out worked out well for me in the end, but I mean, I didn't know that was your like first, you know, sort of a corporate job as a trainer but I do know you're a different trainer now than you were then, for sure. Like just I don't know, like the level of just like the level of happiness you seem to have with it now, and also just you know, I don't, you do a lot of courses and continuing education all the time. You're always trying to sort of better what you can offer to your clients, and uh, uh, I assume testing all these things out on me. That's what it feels like. But
Well, there's a little bit of that. I mean, when it comes down to like you have like avatars as like certain clients, or different types of avatars, and so of my clients, you're the most fit, most able-bodied person to be able to try new training techniques. So there is some experimentation, but it's specific for what you want.
Yeah. I
That
don't
makes
mean that in a
sense.
bad way either. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like sometimes like, oh, we're gonna try this new thing, which I think is fun. I mean, to me, that's kind of the reason for all this. But sorry, so I jumped ahead a little bit there,
Yeah.
but yeah, I was just I didn't know that until now that was like your first, and it probably makes more sense to me because at first I was like, this guy's really quiet. Like I feel like maybe he doesn't. I just didn't like. Also, they only do 30-minute sessions, and it's like you can't get
Yeah.
a workout in 30 minutes.
No.
It's a
No.
not a good system. So don't
No.
anyone who goes to LA Fitness don't get training there. It doesn't work well. But it's yeah. So that that was kind of the start. But and I would say even honestly, like in the time that you were at LA Fitness, I feel like it got better in that time, but it was more after that I felt like you really I felt a difference in kind of what
Mm.
what was in terms of the training and what we were doing. So sorry,
Yeah.
go on. I veered off the path.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of where, you know, depending on where your environment is, you have to make do with what you got. LA Fitness is limited because there's a boatload of people, and if you have specific training goals, you have basically have to work on your feet and think really quickly on, all right, how can we do something, do this movement, but now what I had planned, that equipment's gone because somebody else is using it, which kind of led me to find the gym that I ended up taking over. Is I wanted to find a better training spot for my clients and for me to train out of. And then that's how Superior Barbell started. Um, I was renting space there as a trainer, and they weren't doing anything good as far as business. Like they had a hard time keeping or bringing on new trainers to be able to pay the bills. And then kind of had that moment where they're either going to sell and liquidate all their equipment, or I could buy it. And it's a hefty amount of money to kind of trying to like come up with and like justify. But at that moment, it's like, all right, do I want to sit? Do I want to think about what if, or do I want to just dive in head first and just make it work? Because I mean, I had the vision in place already because I already knew like what this place could be and what the gym could be if it had a little more work, and changed up some of the things. So did it. Couldn't be happier. Could be more stressed at times, but I mean that's kind of what happens with running a business, is that everything's on you. Like you got rent for the business, and then you got rent for home or your mortgage at home. So it's been fun. It's been a challenge, and there's still more to grow with the business and with the gym, and even with my own training business, because I don't market that at all. um, and that's where, I wasn't always like having a little bit of like a fire like under me, a little bit of pressure, because that's when I feel like I shine the most. But when there's no projects to do and there's no like, and things are comfortable, that's where I'm like, I get a little antsy. If that makes sense. Um,
I know that feeling well.
yeah. But yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of things, a lot of different things. And this is probably like the best. I feel like I'm like the best version of myself now than I ever have in my past.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean right. That's what everybody wants, is to kind
Yeah.
of get to that next best version of themselves. And I think uh, it's a always evolving thing, right? It's like you said, you don't want to get complacent, because one, it's kind of boring, like to you like to have a little bit of a fire there. But I think that the ADD, ADHD in us is, it needs something, right? It needs
Hmm.
something to keep it distracted, right? Because you talked about, kind of the external substances and things like that. Like that, I think that's what happens to a lot of people, is it's like they use it as a way to quiet the noise, right?
Hmm.
And the noise
Yeah.
that's in your own head. Like this is just, it's
Yeah.
not
It's not.
it's not real noise. It's not in the literal sense. It's the, the noise that's in your head. They talk about that saying, what the idle hands are the devil's playground, or something,
Yeah.
whatever that is. But I find that very true as well. It's like I come from a background, a family background of alcoholism, and so I I at least saw that probably wasn't a good idea for me, because I think if I I think if I drank, I'd be an alcoholic. Like I don't think there would be an in between, and
Hmm.
so I just never drank, because I was like, I don't want that for myself. But I've seen a lot of that. I've seen what that how that impacts families and my own family, and it's but I think people use it as a tool to, like I said, quiet the noise. But what I find, one of my, like I love the exercise. I love getting stronger. I love uh the I guess, and I don't know what the word is, improvements, progress, whatever you see with as your body changes and you exercise. But honestly, I think that what I love the most about it is that it's like, it's probably the place where my mind is the quietest. Like when
Hmm.
I when I come to exercise, like even better than when I'm asleep. I think it's like I have like I can just focus on that, and like working hard, and really trying to. It's been cool, because I think we talk a lot about what why, like I ask you, why are we doing this? What's this? Plus I've had the pretty substantial injuries that we've been able to like work through. It wasn't like, oh, I got this injury and we just stopped training for however
Hmm.
long it took to heal. We actually like worked through them. And so that's stuff that I haven't really experienced before, both the major injuries, but also just like how to work through one. And I think we've talked about this before, like the old way of training, like when I was in high school and college, it was like my track coach was like, oh, you can run and jump, go run and jump a lot, dude. That's like
Hmm.
that's your workout. Run and jump a lot and hopefully
Yeah.
get better at it. Like that was kind of, there was a little more to it in college, like a little more direction. But even the training, like the strength training part of it, was like, I think nobody ever talked to me about being having flexibility, being more mobile, and now I have had terrible flexibility, and you have helped me with that too. So I think it's like there's just a different way of thinking of these things now, maybe, than there was before. Uh, but again, it's like your goals change too as you get older. Like for me, it's like I want to be able to get on the floor and play with my kids. That's like that's number one, and I need something that's that mental release, which sounds silly that that's going to the gym, but it really is the way that I can like work out the stress, work out whatever is a part of that day. So I
Hmm.
think that, I don't know, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, like that maybe that's something too that draws you to it, that it's a
Oh,
way to help mentally.
absolutely. If I don't work out, I'm a jerk
Yeah, yeah.
to my mostly to myself, but my wife can attest to that. It's I'm just irritable, more irritable. And so today, after today's workout, actually not even after, like in the middle of it, I was just like completely exhausted, couldn't think, and I was just trying to like be in the moment and just like breathe and just like not throw up a little bit. Um, and that's honestly like that feeling. as like ridiculous as it sounds to some people, is great because there's no noise. It's meditative to an extent because I have to be present. And so if I'm not present, then I'm not going to be focusing on what I'm doing. And that's when I'm more prone to do something dumb and hurt myself.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's when I remember when I got that foot drop thing, because I'm getting older and all my spine is compressing from the top to the bottom.
Things happen when you get older. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I was super depressed because the identity of who I was. I'm a strong, I have great squat. I squat like 1,000,000 pounds, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, I can't do this anymore. I can't deadlift anymore because while I don't have pain, I don't have feeling in my foot. And that's, for me, was like super scary because I didn't know if it was going to come back. I didn't know what was going to happen. The doctors didn't really know. They're like, oh, we can give you an epidural. I'm like, you don't sound too positive about that. And because I don't have pain, I don't want you to stick a giant needle in my back.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to train around it. And luckily, the coach I have that does my programming for me, he's super knowledgeable and has been able to work around it. And it's the same guy that my coach is the one that I go to a lot of these trainings for and continuing educations, because when we get hurt, it's not a matter of we have to stop training. And what I try to tell a lot of my clients when they get hurt is just because you're hurt doesn't mean you can't train. We can work around it and we can mitigate it's not like a degeneration, but so with injuries, if we take time off, we have to add that extra time into getting back to where you were before the injury.
Yeah.
And so figuring out how can we get the main movement patterns into your program, into your daily routine, while mitigating that painful like compensation that comes into play, which is kind of what we did with your shoulder, what we did with your elbow. Oh, this hurts. Okay, boom. We're going to try this instead. Does that hurt? No. Perfect. Let's do that. Yep. Find the movements that don't cause pain and move forward.
Yeah, I didn't know it. And I think, I mean, that's been hugely helpful for me. And I think just working on stuff that's like actually like breaking down the movements. I mean, squat's a really good example for me because I all my life I've squatted fairly well. Like I've been able to squat pretty heavy, but what was happening before you came along, as I was getting older, my knees were starting to hurt, and so my squats, I didn't want to lift less weight, so I just squatted less deep over, and that got worse and worse and worse, and so we dialed everything back to get my knees to not hurt all the time, and now I'm back to squatting more than I ever did before. So it's like with the right guidance and help, like these things can be overcome, and whether that's an injury or a lack of flexibility or whatever it is, all of that can be it's like that's where you need someone who knows what they're doing. It's like it's not like I didn't know how to go to the gym, but I didn't know what the right things were to do with what my body was doing at that moment. And it was just, it's like people talk about, well, I want to get in shape before I get a trainer. And it's like, it's probably backwards. You should, the trainer will help you know how to do that the right way. So I think, it's incredibly helpful physically and mentally. And I'm the same. If I don't get to exercise, then I just become a jerk, and I don't want to be a jerk to my wife and my kids. So it's, and my wife knows it's important. So she knows that I get less pleasant to be around at that point. So let's let's talk a little bit about, kind of being a business owner, and when you and I have talked about this a lot recently
Yeah.
during our sessions, but uh, it's one thing to be a trainer, and you help people and everything, but then being a business owner and all that comes with that, obviously that's a very different set of skills, which doesn't mean that you don't have those skills or can't develop them, but it's just a change, right? It's a change from
Mm-hmm.
working for someone else to now it's like you have a bunch of other trainers that work for you. You have this building that everybody likes to go and work out. Like there's all these things that become your responsibility. So how do you feel about it? Like how are you do you feel like that transition was a hard transition to make?
I mean, the hardest part was it was pretty easy up until when we had to find a new location, and that's where things got very, very stressful. But because of kind of the vision I had and the kind of energy that I put into the business, I've been the environment's cultivated a very like supportive and like a kind of like a close knit family,
Yeah,
in a sense.
for sure.
I mean, with the trainers, um, that's kind of where how I envisioned it was to basically, if people wanted to come on, I wanted to basically meet them first, kind of interview them, so that way I can get a feel for like the type of people and the kind of how they hold themselves. Because I mean, granted, like we price a lot of people out by how much we charge per month, but at the same token, it takes one bad apple to ruin the whole bunch. If you heard that saying, and I don't want that to happen at the gym. I want everybody to be able to feel comfortable and have no problem talking to each other, and all feel supported with whatever their goals are.
Yeah, you built a culture there as much as just a gym, right? It's not like it's not like going to LA Fitness, or I've never been to an
Mhm.
Equinox, but it's not what I imagine an Equinox. I mean, it's just like everybody knows each other. It's a very cool uh, place where people are like, you know, people are working out in one corner of the gym. Somebody does something, that's a new PR for them. It's like everybody in the gym's clapping. Everybody's excited for them. Like
Mhm.
it's a really cool. It and it's like, I mean, frankly, that should cost more.
Yeah.
Like that type of it's not so crowded that you can't get your workout in. Like it's you have that culture and that environment of really, like I said, being able to choose your goals. So it's selective to people that are serious about their fitness,
Mhm.
right? It's not, you're not going to get a rush in January at
No.
your, like your gym
No.
isn't going to like suddenly fill up in January, because the people that go to your gym have been working out all year round. They like that. That's
Mhm.
like a part of who they are. So you don't have to worry about, being crowded at resolution time. Like that's not like, I hated going to LA Fitness in
Yeah.
January, February. Like it was brutal. There's so many people there. In June, you could get any machine you wanted. Like nobody
Yeah.
nobody cared anymore. But it was just kind of that's not what's happening at Superior Barbell Club, and I think that's a testament to you. Like you did that. That's not you sort of decided what you wanted in your business, and that's what you've created. So I think, kudos to you on that. I think something that's funny that I know we both need to work on, and we've talked about this, is the working on your business or working in your business thing. The ability to maybe delegate or find other
Mhm.
people that can do some of the things that don't have to have your hand on it. But I understand that we both have the issue deciding what doesn't have to have our hand on it, because we like our hands on
Yeah.
everything, because we have
Yeah.
a very particular way of how we want our business to run. So I don't know if you have thoughts on or plans on how you might do that for your business. I just recently hired a assistant, so I'm excited about that. I at least have, but even that, it's like, she's like, what do you need me to do? I'm not sure yet. What do you think you should do? Why don't you tell me, and we'll work it out that way. So at least it's someone I know, and I can trust her to actually like help me decide what things will be good to hand off to her. But I think when it comes to training, people who want you to train them are going to want you to train them, right? That's the selective part. It's like when someone wants me to do a surgery, I can't send someone else to do that surgery. So there's components of it that have to be you, and then but there's components of it that don't have to be you. And I mean you or me or whatever. And I think figuring that out is that's kind of on my list for this year. I don't know that this is really a question, I guess, more than just, I know this is a thing we've talked about a lot, and it's I think an important thing for you to grow your business, and me as well. Like, I think it's just figuring out what I can give to someone else is like one of the hardest parts of it.
Well, and that's to a certain degree, like Andre, my business partner, he handles a good amount of stuff that I can't, or like I don't do, but he's a little bit better at.
Yeah.
And like my wife, she pretty much runs the social media page, because when I was doing it, I was in our posts, people can easily tell if I wrote something or if she wrote it, because if I wrote it, it comes across kind of aggressive, but I don't mean for it to sound aggressive, or not necessarily aggressive, but more like, oh, come on, you idiot. Like, why'd you do this?
Yeah.
Or like,
it comes across as the angry dad, and she doesn't the disappointed, not angry, disappointed dad.
Disappointed. Yeah. I definitely have a very solid disappointed dad vibe with the gym sometimes. But there is, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that, because so the businesses up front from the gym, they have a maintenance guy or a cleaning guy that comes in, mops floors and all that. And I've been thinking about giving a call to find out what his prices are, because I like having a clean gym, but it takes a lot to clean it, because in the San Fernando Valley, we're in a desert, and there's a plethora of dust that shows up and seemingly out of nowhere. And that's just, I'm tired of it.
Yeah. No, it's, I mean, people don't know, but the number of times I've seen you pick up a vacuum or like something, I'm like, this doesn't need to be him. This definitely doesn't he does not need to be the vacuum guy. That's for sure. Like your skills in other areas are going to waste when you're vacuuming. And it's again, it's like, it's easy to say that, but I do the same thing. I do that a lot. Like, there are a lot of things that I'm like, because also sometimes it's easy to just do it.
Yeah.
Right. It's easier to just do it than say, I'm going to find someone else to do this, and then they maybe not do it as you want. It's a whole thing. But I think that's one of the things I'm trying to learn is that sometimes done is better than perfect. Right? So you get that guy to come in clean, he probably won't clean as good as you do. He probably just won't. Like, that's the reality of it. If he does, great. But if it's close, it's probably good. And then you're not wasting your time cleaning or vacuuming or whatever. Like, you're building new training protocols, you're bringing on new trainers, you're like building the actual business. So I think my opinion on this matter for you is definitely hire the cleaning guy. Like, just having someone to do. But I think again, it's like it's so much easier said than done, and it's like we do it all the time at our house too. It's just like I was like, why don't we have someone to clean our house, or why don't we have, some, or like, why am I going to the grocery store? Like, it's stupid stuff, but it's like sometimes I just enjoy it too. And I think that there gets to be this focus on like, don't do anything that isn't like high value activity. But I don't really mind going to the grocery store for 30 minutes. Like, but it's just an example that I use. But I think if it's not something you enjoy and it's not something that's building your business, then you need to find someone else to do it.
Yeah.
That's kind of that. And I'm saying that to myself as much as as much as anyone else. Like,
it's funny because like Lex, my wife, has said several times that she's like, Casey, you really need to like write down how you operate the gym.
Yeah.
Because if anything happened to you, we have no clue because we're not in your brain. And I'm like, that's one of the hardest things for me to do, is actually just itemize on paper or on like the computer. All right, this is what I do. This is how I operate. This is how my brain works. Sometimes like it's a mystery. I don't know how my brain works, but I'm like, oh, I have this idea, boom. And then I basically deconstruct the idea or the end result in my brain. And then I'm like, oh, this is how it'll work. And then I go and do it. Like a machine breaks down. Oh, let me just take it apart and put it back together.
Right.
Oh, and it works.
Right. Yeah.
But it's
also, I run into that. What I figured out a trick that I've tried a time or two, and I think it might work. I tell someone else to write it down. And then I proofread it. Right. Like, because I'm also not good at getting that. Like, I'm not good at putting what's in my head on paper. But if I let someone else write what they think is in my head, then I can be like, then it focuses me. Then I'm like, this, no, you missed here. Overall, this is good. So it's a little trick that I have tried a few times recently. And I feel like, hey, this might be a thing. Cause I'm like, because I don't articulate it well, what the actual protocol is, because most of it's in my head. But if I let someone who has watched me do these things a number of times try and write it down, and then I just go back and like essentially proofread it and add it, it seems to actually be a thing. I'm sure I didn't make this technique up. I'm sure people do this all the time, but this is what I have run into to help with that. I think we have a lot of the same, just like in difficulty letting go, like difficulty giving things to other people for fear of them not being done to the quality that we expect.
And I think a lot of that kind of comes into like just like kind of similar childhoods where we didn't necessarily feel like we could rely on other people to do the job, so we had to try and do it ourselves.
Yeah. Well, and also like I think if you grow up without a lot of excess, without a lot of money, and you're doing these things out of necessity at a point where you can't bring, but that's survival mode. But so once you become once you're kind of out of survival mode and now you have a business to grow, it is hard to change that mentality. It is hard to change that, like, well, I'll just do everything because but like what, at some point that actually starts to hurt you. At some point you're like, it's holding my growth back. So I think, yeah, for sure. Like that, I think your upbringing probably has to do with people's upbringing has to do with everything, right? The way you approach things in life. And so it's a bit of changing that mindset and being able to, learn a different way.
Yeah. No, it's definitely true that as far as delegating, and I like that you said high action items, because like I've spent my time reading a lot of entrepreneur business, books and podcasts, and it is a matter of, all right, what absolutely needs my attention and what's something somebody else can do.
Yeah.
And, you know, good enough is better than, not really perfection, because there is no such real thing as perfection, but just releasing the grip and being like, okay, you can handle this.
Yeah, it for sure. I mean, it's a hard shift to make, and I I'm trying, and it's like, that's why I like, we talk about this stuff all the time, because I'm like, I know I'm not the only one struggling with this, but maybe maybe he'll have an idea that will help me. Maybe I'll have an idea that helps him. But it's just, I think it's something that's important in if you want to try and grow like any business. So yeah, makes a lot of sense. But let's shift gears a little bit here. I want to kind of get to the part where I ask you the questions that I ask every guest. First one is related to the name of the podcast, being Know Your Why. So what's your why, Casey? What drives you? What motivates you at this point? I know it changes throughout our lives, but what do you feel is your big driver right now?
I mean, honestly, it's kind of, it's the culture that the gym has, and you know, the moments that I get to spend with my clients, and you know, kind of get a snapshot into like what's going on in their life and how can I help improve their life. Because I mean, at the end of the day, it's like that. When I wake up, I'm like, all right, let's go. There's no like, oh, like sluggishly getting out of bed. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Because I love it. And ultimately, like, I want to be able to offer my services to people that can't afford it. Because everybody could benefit from having training, especially from an earlier age, because the earlier you are, the more knowledge you'll be able to build from somebody that actually takes time to continue their education is important, because that's going to be able to pay off for the rest of their life. And that's kind of the ultimate goal that I had for the business, was to be able to have it pay for itself, and then I can start working with, you know, student athletes that can't afford it but could benefit, especially from like low income neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I know we've talked about that before. I think that would be amazing. I mean, just to be able to get to that point where you're like, I mean, you still have to train me, but if you can, but you can bring in some student athletes, like that would be very cool to be involved in. All right, second question. Tell me something about yourself that isn't common knowledge. I imagine probably I might know, but things that most people don't know, or maybe you'll surprise me, but something that's not front and center.
Well, I mean, that's a hard one, because I mean, one of the things that, like, most people are shocked that I went to culinary school, and also when they first talk to me, when people first look at me, they're like, oh, this guy seems really intimidating because he's this big guy with muscles. But I'm actually just
with
like
a mullet at one point.
yeah. I mean, I've for sure gone through like different personalities, I would say, or like characters. Like, I build characters and whatnot. But the culinary thing is usually the one that like shocks people the most, because they're like, oh, what? You did that? Wow.
Yeah. No, again, I have been lucky enough to have some both baking and like smoking meat and stuff like that. I've had both, and it's all very good. So yeah, it is. I would imagine that's a thing that people wouldn't. I certainly didn't think that when I knew you for a while before I knew that. So I think that would probably be pretty pretty surprising to like find out this big strong trainer at the gym is, oh, by the way, he make you a really cool cake.
Oh yeah.
It's
The baking part's probably more impressive than just like the cooking meat.
yeah,
But yeah.
it's yeah. Your wife's lucky; she gets to benefit from those things.
Yeah.
When people hear this, how can they reach out to you if they want to connect, whether it's for training or just your story is inspirational to them? How would you recommend them reaching out?
I mean, if they have Instagram, that's a really easy way at Strength by Casey. Or my email, Casey at superior.barbell.com, barbellclub.com. Yeah, those two easiest, best ways.
Okay, cool. We'll put that stuff in the show notes too, so it'll be there for people. Last question: what advice would you give to people that are maybe at a point where they're struggling in their life and they're trying to, I don't know, find a way through? What would you tell them?
I mean, for my own experience, I took basically took a step back, like an objective view. So kind of like when, for instance, like when I got sober in 2009, I was working in the kitchen, just always miserable, and I knew there was something else out there, but I was also sick and tired of where I was at. And that moment where I had an opportunity to reach out to somebody that had experience in the something else out there, I just jumped in on that. And it was in that moment that I've used a couple times in my life, like with the jobs, is this something that I want to continue doing for the rest of my life? Does this bring me joy? If I don't have any joy, what does actually make me happy? And then trying to figure out how to implement that into my life. Because without having that sense of balance, or that yin to the yang of the miserable or like just like flat feeling to like some sort of elevating activity, and just, it's a hard thing to do, is ask for help. That's one of the hardest 4-letter words.
Mm-hmm.
Because growing up like in the masculine kind of upbringing that a lot of us were a part of, growing up, is, oh, you don't ask for help, you just figure it out.
Yep.
But there's so much more strength that comes from being able to admit that you need help and just talking to people. Is that, sometimes I talk myself in circles.
No, that was perfect. I mean, I think, yeah, ask for help. And I think that your point about sort of just taking that step back and like ask, like really check, sort of doing a self check that
Mm-hmm.
are you happy? Is this like, is what's happening in your life right now, does it make you feel good? And it maybe sounds a little bit like, oh, you need to be happy. People probably sometimes, same thing as the asking for help, people might frown upon that, but it's not weakness. That's a big strength to kind of step back and say, okay, what am I happy right now? And then maybe the real strength is then figuring out what to do about it, right? And making those, you made changes in your life because of that, right? And it, obviously led you to a great place. So I think that's really good. And finding those mentors along the way that can help you achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, so I just had this flashback into like going into like the counseling degree that I got, is kind of going through like a checklist. All right, so what's the problem? Do I have any control over it? Yes or no? And then basically going through that checklist. If I have control over it, all right, so what can I do about it? Mm. And so that's kind of like the objective, like look at whatever situation has arisen. Like if you don't have control of the situation, then there's nothing that you can do about it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, like we have a sense of there is an action to be taken. And then it's just trying to figure out, all right, what action can I actually take to better whatever situation I'm in, whether it even just be my own personal outlook at what's going on, my reactions to whatever's going on, or the scarier part is, all right, do I need to change my career? Because a lot of times that's a huge scary place to go into, because you're leaving comfort of like that steady paycheck to for being self-employed is I'm leaving the safety net to trust that my idea, my plan is going to work.
Yeah, for sure. It's I really like that sentiment, because I've heard, I never get the quote right, but I've actually heard it put a couple of different ways. I've heard it in different languages. I don't know if it's just like it's a thing, but where people say essentially that there's, along the lines of what you said, it's like there's never any real reason to kind of sit and worry about something, because if you don't have control over it, then there's no reason to worry about it. Don't waste your time on it. If you do have control over it, there's no reason to worry about it. Just go do something about it. So it's kind of like, essentially, just like you said, you're sort of realizing that this is, there's action. If there's action to be taken, then do that. And if there's not, then let it go. Right. It's just, it's so, and it's easier said than done, but it is a helpful exercise to take a minute and step back and see, if you're feeling worried, anxious, whatever it is, stress about something, like, am I feeling that way because I should be doing something and I'm not doing it? Or am I feeling that way because there's nothing I can do about it? And in which case, okay, well, just try to move on. But yeah, I think it's really good advice for life in general.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes practice, because it's very easy to say that, but to actually do it, you have to do it a lot of times, because it's
you're not going to get it right every time, because it's hard to do.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, Casey, this is awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you kind of sharing your story. We've talked a lot, but I think even I learned some things here, and I think hopefully this will inspire people to, if they're in a bad place, they can, there's a way through for everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll sign off. Have a great day, everyone.
I'd like to show you why knowing your why is the start of your journey. Without a strong why, it can be so difficult to reach your maximum potential. My name is Dr. Jason Balara, and every week I meet with real estate investors and mindset specialists that are taking action in order to build a life according to their own terms. We will break down what drives successful people and allows them to achieve at such a high level. If you are a professional wanting to break through, or simply someone that wants to hear an inspiring story, the Know Your Why podcast is made for you.